Hello and welcome to the concluding part of my adventure at the Nollywood Film Week in Paris between May 9th and May 11th. If you want to support this channel, leave a like and a comment so that the YouTube algorithm can show my video to more people and I can finally resign my job and live large like my God willed for me before my father ever met my mother. It may not have seemed like it before, but I want you to realize that even though I was in Paris, the city of romance and indecipherable transport systems and strange men stalking lonely women in the middle of the night, this entire trip felt like work. God, it was so stressful. I was always so tired and exhausted during the 3 days because the last of the scheduled films of the day usually ended really late, almost at midnight. On the last day of the festival, I decided to finally visit an attraction or two before I saw the movie that was showing that evening at 4:30, titled The Fire and the Moth. There was a for Amina showing by 2 p.m. But I was really quite underwhelmed with the trailer. I thought it was very badly done, so I decided not to waste my time. On May 11th, I woke up late that morning and hurriedly got ready to actually finally have some fun before the drudgery of watching Nollywood movies back to back. Oh, I want to mention something. While I was writing this review, I happened to be playing something on Netflix titled She the People. And I just want to ask, is this Tyler Perry guy for real? And like, does he read the script before he starts up the camera? Why do white people look so weird because of his color grading in his movies? And are all these people actually professional actors that get paid to act? I know he's very rich, so why does he not just simply pay somebody to write a story for him? I found the story quite embarrassing and cringe-inducing. No, no, no. Anyway, so my first stop in Paris was the Conciergerie, which used to be a courthouse and then a prison. It was built around 700 years ago, and for me, it was love at first sight. Fewer things fascinate me more than the passage of time and the weight of history that is eminent in a building or a book or a thing. And I had a good time there, just surrounded by all that old stuff. There were also all these clowns on the floors there, practicing fencing and just ruining the whole mood for me. But despite how nice I found this place, it was not really my aim. I had bought a joint ticket to also see a cathedral nearby, and I just absolutely could not wait. St. Chapelle Cathedral is a masterpiece of stained glass built for the glory of God. It was a fantastic piece of 800-year-old architecture made by people that were working at the absolute height of their powers. Of course, as a European cathedral, it had these very high ceilings and these magnificent, utterly magnificent stained glass windows. I managed to grab a bite at an African restaurant where they have these two girls who always look like they don't want you to enter and eat their food. Ugh. But the jollof rice was really good. I think it's the Senegalese jollof rice. Yeah, I think they were Senegalese there. I really didn't want to stay out too long because I was quite far from the theater. So I managed to hurry back there just in time for Amina. But like I said, I had no plans to actually watch it. So I spent 2 hours outside the hall, just in with the what kept me up founder. And then finally, it was time for The Fire and the Moth. The Fire and the Moth is directed by Taiwo Egunjobi and it was shot in Ibadan. It gives this really intense, rustic, rural vibes. And the story is about intrigues between smugglers and their off-takers. So we have a smuggler who is handed an Ife bronze head to bring to his boss. But things get very murky very quickly as they are all interrupted by some police investigation and action, and everybody just scatters everywhere. Some people die. This movie was supposed to have been released on May 20 on Prime Video, but that was unfortunately moved to June 3rd, if I remember correctly. So, like I was saying, the story is basically a smuggler's tale of risk and reward, though we never actually see any reward. A smuggler is interrupted on the way to deliver an Ife bronze head that was recently stolen from the museum. Things go awry very quickly due to miscommunication and bad luck, and then the movie just goes from like 0 to 100 very quickly. We have the eternally delightful Olarutimi playing a police officer at a border town where the smugglers are being investigated. Inidima Okoje is a sometimes reluctant and sometimes inquisitive PhD candidate who is smart enough to be in a PhD program, but not smart enough for, common sense. And Tayo Faniron, our methless protagonist Saba, who just does not like to use his mouth to do anything. Like he barely talks in this movie. So because the deal is interrupted and through a series of unfortunate events, some French guy has to be sent from the UK. Basically, a French assassin has to be sent from the UK to try and figure out where Saba is in Ibadan. I found this guy fascinating because even though he had never been in Nigeria, he had an awfully good idea of where everything in this border area of Nigeria is. I mean, I'm Nigerian and I cannot find my way around the Kurudu without Google Maps. And this guy just rents a bus and just does an infallible road trip through southwestern Nigeria without encountering any kola nut chewing police roadblocks and army people asking for bribes, no armed robbers, no people pushing their bananas through his windows, nobody hawking fresh fish far from any body of water. I was okay, this guy. So Saba tries to sell the Ife Bruins head to a professor, but he keeps getting interrupted by Olarutimi of security services and the immigration people. And yes, that is what the police force in this movie is officially called. Security services. A name that sounds like they outsource bouncers to strip clubs. That was the most imaginative thing that Taiwo Egunjobi could come up with. And do you want to know what the customs agency was called? Yep, you got it. Customs services, because they are obviously a wardrobe making company. that is that is the kind of gargantuan imagination that we are dealing with in this movie. It reminds me of the clowns who wrote a Lagos love story and named the main character Promise Quest, a name utterly unheard of, which makes zero sense, both as a name and even in the context of the movie. It's like the writers are now required to hit their head on a concrete countertop before they are allowed to submit scripts. Anyway, I really like the character of this enforcer guy. He gave very cold Terminator vibes, and he had a strong build that qualified him for his kind of work. He does a good job of popping fools, and including, to my great surprise, which was weird, he ended up killing off some of the best characters in the movie. I was surprised at some scenes because they made no logical sense story wise. I was like, if you off this person now, then what remains for us to watch in the movie? It was so sad. This movie had some weird decisions. I was quite the only thing that amazed me more than all the things I just said was when the movie just abruptly ended without any resolution, as far as I could see. Is there supposed to be a part two, or what? I found it quite confusing. There was also this completely messed up and confusing storyline where the investigating custom officer's boss, who had ordered him to do the investigation of the stolen Ifa bronze head from the museum in the first place, orders him to stop the investigation because powers that be said so. But the police don't have the bronze head. And when Olarutimi, the chief of police, the head of the investigating unit of the police, called a powers that be, the guy expressed surprise that Olarutimi was still looking for the bruised head. So, if the powers that be stopped the customs officers from investigating the police over the bronze head, but are also surprised that the police don't have the head, then what does this mysterious powers that be gain from the whole matter? Since nobody knows anything about anything, I'm also confused. The mysterious powers acted like he had something to lose from the customs investigation. But as we can see from actually watching the movie, only the unknown smuggler, Saba, knows anything about what's going on. The police don't. So it was so stupid. And don't worry, you see what I mean when the movie actually comes out on Prime. I kind of see where the movie is going. I also had to go online and read the interviews with the director. But I'm just so sorry that it didn't really show through. I mean, it was all nicely shot and rendered, but it's not very well written and storyboarded. So no amount of sophistry and projection and hopes and dreams can make it anything more than the almost gibberish that we saw at its world premiere in Paris. It gave me the same feeling I had when I read The Handmaid's Tale years ago. I remember reading the page, flipping to another page on my Kindle, and then seeing the epilogue. In my mind, I was like, epilogue to what? Is the story over? I did not expect it at all because so many of my questions while reading the initial novel went unanswered. So I think this is why I actually never bothered to watch the series. So that's what this Fire and the Moth is giving. The title of the movie itself is in reference to a quote by the antagonist who swears that he will draw Saba to him like a moth to a flame. I know the writer was feeling like the second coming of John the Baptist at this line, but sorry, it makes no sense in the context of this movie, especially as you ended the movie so abruptly that we don't even know what happens next. Ah, God. In his favor, some of the acting is really good. I like the cinematography, the border town vibes. It reminded me very strongly of the town where I did my NYC in the north. But also the location of my actual house there, somewhere in the bushes, not too far from the main road that also doubled as a smuggler route. And something I have to tell you that is not really explicitly shown in this movie. I have to tell you, these smuggler people, they are not human beings. I know in your head you have like images of maybe sometimes shabbily dressed people peacefully smuggling turkey and frozen fish across across the bushes along Seme border or from Benin Republic. But the reality is really quite different. These people drive like they have a death wish, and woe betide you if you are on the road when their convoy of very dusty golf cars come blitzing by. I don't think smugglers understand the concept of using the car brakes, that's the brakes on the car, because they are certainly going to run you over if you're standing on the road. I recall we once heard a lot of oohs and ahs one afternoon and later learned that some kid had been playing on the road and the child was now basically scattered all over the road. Like there were a lot of branches and leaves that were covering stuff. It was very, very sad stuff. My fellow copper who had witnessed the event came back traumatized because it was the first time he was, seeing human brains. I remember, I cannot forget how he came and it was like, Ekwe, the thing just they move, they shake as they for road. Yeah, it was a very chilling memory that I just cannot let go of now, more than 10 years later. And when watching this movie and seeing all this bush, I remember I kept thinking, well, nobody needs to ever build a toilet in this town because, oh my, so much bush. That gives you a glimpse of basically how my NYC went. In fact, I was so glad to see an actual walking toilet when I returned to Lagos. Now, after the fire and the moth, we finally had Olumotan, the stories we are not supposed to tell, as the closing movie for the 5 day festival. Now, Olumotan is written and directed by Adekunle Adejuigbe. It's more like an anthology of about 4 shorts. The director is also the guy behind Delivery Boy, a fantastic film I once saw at a film festival. I think Lights Camera something film festival in Lagos around maybe 2018 or so. Now Adekunle certainly has uncommon grit because I recall he told the audience that he used his salary to fund the movie and then that he had to learn how to do the color grading, special effects, and so forth online just so that he could finally produce the movie. If you have not seen Delivery Boy, I don't know if it's showing on any streaming service, but it's a piece of work. I remember that I clapped so hard until my palms turned red in the cinema that day. Now, for Olumoto, Tony Tomato, or Shola Shobowale, as you know her, is a witch or something in chains who has been condemned to death. But there was some question. She questions basically the humanity of her judges and then decides to talk her way into regaling them with tales that cast a shadow on humanity. Basically, are we humans or are we animals? What are we at the core? Do we pretend to be civilized people or are we just following our basic instincts? So just think about it as a sort of tales by moonlight, just that the person telling the tales will be very dead very soon. This section of the movie takes place in a dark cave or a valley or something, which with some richly dressed spectators from various Nigerian tribes standing haughtily around, the men thoughtful, the women curious. The witch is chained in the middle of the room and is given an opportunity to make a speech before the executioner's axe fall. And so we have the rest of the movie. Now, the first story that she told is called The Last Condom, and it is somewhat comedic in tone. It follows 4 people on the eve of the COVID-19 lockdown who found themselves in the same shop looking to buy condoms. Now, they cut across different classes and strata of society because there's a rich guy, a prostitute, a very boisterous local tout, and a cool, calm, and collected, scorned wife who doesn't want to go through the lockdown without her husband using protection because she suspects him of cheating with someone and then contracting HIV. So through a series of both tense and comedic events, these four people, alongside the store owner, discover that he finally only actually just has one condom left, which he then decides to attach a ridiculous price tag to, maybe like 50K or something. I can't remember. Now, since everyone had a personal reason, well, it's a condom, so you can only have a personal reason to need it in it. Since everyone had a personal reason why he should sell it to them, he leaves them alone in the shop to figure out who would be the most deserving of it. Now, of course, I'm not going to spoil it, but I really, really, really like this story. It was funnier than it had any right to be. It was tense. It was tightly written, and the actors were great. Well, except for this guy who talks like he's holding a very sharp knife between his butt cheeks. There was just something off about him. I can't tell if his demeanor is real or contrived, but it just felt a little off color. Like maybe he had some sort of speech impediment in real life. I don't know. It was just a bit odd. Maybe it's his character. I've never seen him before, but he just sounded slow. Aside from the one scene where the visual effects was just too embarrassing in this day and age, I really like this story because it was very engaging until the very end. A big up to the writer. I absolutely cannot wait for you guys to see this one when it comes out. Now, the second story that the witch tells is titled "Life is Good" and is headlined by Mike Afolari. This story is more of is it an allegory? Is it metaphor? I don't know. The story is not really the story that we are watching, but a higher commentary on addiction or delusions of grandeur. Or, I don't know, yeah, it was a little confusing, but it follows a music star who is also a betting genius and a stockbroker or something. I mean, I get it on an abstract level, but I think it was a bit much because it took the execution too seriously. The story took itself too seriously. I also could not settle on Mike Afolari as a because between his breezy acting in a Lagos love story and his weird disconnected performance here, it's possible that he's just a fine boy but a bad actor. I saw where this story was going, but I think he just took himself too seriously with the layers of abstraction. I enjoy a complicated plot more than the next guy sometimes, but this one was not complicated. It just drove itself off a cliff, right? So the protagonist basically exists in a fantasy world fueled by addiction and a worsening economic situation. But the story doesn't always make the lines between his real life and his fantasies clear, since it also has this weird focus on a mystical book from which his powers spring, and which, when considered in the context of the entire movie, causes more confusion than clarity. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but you see it when it comes out. I don't know. I don't know. The third short is called White Dog, and this story is shot in monochrome. I found this very fascinating. The themes, while very spiritual and mostly esoteric, were very engaging. A girl is confused about her nightmares, and we watch in real time as the minister logically unravels her problems and then comes to an educated conclusion about the causes. It also ends up linking the girl with fornication, right? Now, I really, really like the minister's character, wonderfully played by a certain Bola Steven Atitebi. She had this force of personality that really came through the screen. I love the script, very well written, well shot interrogation of sex and its spiritual connotations. I also like that most of it took place in just one room in the pastor's office. It ends too cheaply, in my opinion, and such a riveting conversation should not have had so banal a conclusion. But I really, really liked it. I like the black and white. I thought it was really good. The final shot was certainly something. If none of the stories I've mentioned above has piqued your interest to look out for Olumotan when it releases, please, I beg of you, in the name of everything that you hold dear, do it for this last word, because I believe that this one was a work of art. It's the film version of that saying, "What's in a name?" We have a girl bereft of culture and mostly disconnected from her ancestry, as she doesn't really identify with the personas of the long lines of hunters, of which her father is the last. Now, her father, who is a hunter that is exceedingly proud of his roots, spends most of his screen time in this movie reminding her of the middle of her name, and also feels insulted when she tried to shorten it to make it more modern. Now, this movie is really an ode to the Yoruba tradition of Oriki, which is like a poem or a verse that Yoruba people chant. It can be either an oral history or a song of praise and worship for a particular person. It's a very interesting piece of Yoruba culture. You can Google it. The story is deeply cultural, and then when it all comes together in the end, I have to tell you, it literally gave me chills. The girl is later in life set upon by some thugs who would love to do nothing more than, brutally assault and murder her to make a political statement just before elections. And you guys, you just need to check it out whenever it releases. The special effects were fantastic. The chants were sublime. The cinematography was awesome. The action was wow. We were all just spellbound in the cinema. Like, I'm telling you, I had chills. Like, I really had chills. In fact, a black French girl told me afterwards that she actually wept at the ending because she had never seen that sort of thing before. And the way that they infused the culture into it really, really made it real for her. I think this story was my favorite in the whole festival, followed closely by The Weekend. It was really good. It's basically redeemed the entire anthology. Now, since this was the last day, there was a small after party, and I finally got to my hotel past 1 a.m. to crash since my flight was in the afternoon of the very next day. And yeah, that was it. Like I said, it was a very short trip. It was very stressful. I barely saw anything. I was just here for the movies. It was fun, when I was watching this stuff, but it was definitely work. There was nothing pleasurable about this trip at all. All right, so that's it for my adventures at the Nollywood Film Week Festival. Watch out for some of these movies that I have mentioned. They will be coming out in either a cinema or a streaming service near you. I think they are really worth, taking a look at and forming your own opinion on. I liked the experience in general, and I'm sorry this video is coming late. I was exceedingly busy at work, and I mostly forgot to save that I had to do it until a few days ago. So yeah, that's it from me. I will see you in the next one.